I'm Destin. How's it going?
Hi, I'm Matt Whitman.
Yeah, Destin Sandlin. There you go. This is No Dumb Questions, a program where we talk to each other. And today's question is for you, Matt.
Thank you, Destin.
What is the best advice you have ever received?
That's surprisingly difficult. I have a couple that come to mind immediately, but I'm not totally sure that I'm willing to put those on the internet.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, isn't it? Like the thing that gets like really deep into the, like, I needed to hear that and somebody told me, makes you a little vulnerable, doesn't it?
It really does, especially because some of the best advice I ever got involved how to be married, and not necessarily super intimate stuff, but I don't know, everything about being married is kind of intimate. I don't know. Okay. All right. Let's go with the sports one. Can I go categories? Is that all right?
Yeah, just whatever. It doesn't matter.
Let's do that.
Let's just...
Yeah, okay. I think the best sports advice I ever got was...
Keep your eye on the ball.
Be coachable. No, but that's really good advice too. It's amazing how simple that advice is and how much people don't take it. Like if you just watch the ball longer than other people in baseball, you have a higher batting average and you're better at baseball. Just watch it longer.
Yeah.
That's simple. Yeah. No, be a good teammate, be coachable. I think those would be the two that tie for the best advice I ever got in sports. Nothing technical, nothing practical. Be a good teammate, be coachable. What do you think of that?
It sounds like throwaway advice that your coach says right before a game. It doesn't sound like something that cuts to the core of human... You know what I mean? Because you get advice...
Hey, Destin, Matt, tell me advice that changed your life. Sure, here's a couple that I think are really important and maybe even transfer the rest of life. No, that advice is dumb and a waste. Try again. Oh.
No, it sounds... Okay. You asked me what I thought about it. It sounds like something somebody just says. Like keep your eye on the ball.
I thought you'd say something at least kind of nice.
Sorry. I mean...
No, it's good. Really, you don't think be a good teammate is legit advice?
I think it's excellent advice, but it sounds like it's packaged into such a small little morsel that it's just something that somebody would just throw at you. Hey, be a good teammate. Pass the ball or whatever.
Okay, yeah, sure. But now imagine somebody who really cares about you sitting down with you and seeing what you're not that good at and being like, hey, do you know what matters? Winning. Your stupid batting average doesn't matter at all. And you coming into the dugout and debating with the scorekeeper whether that was a base hit or an error to campaign for a better batting average, you're missing the point of sports and teammates and life. So it was a pretty profound bit of advice, actually. Even if it does sound throwaway, the beauty was in the simplicity. You're not being a good teammate right now. You're just worried about yourself and what you get.
See, that's better. That's like somebody grabbing you by the shoulders, looking at you in the eyes and telling you something deeply. Like that, when I get advice from someone, particularly people that are older than me or have more experience than I do, not necessarily older, that's what good advice feels like. It's like they grab you, they look you deep into your soul, and they're like, hey, I'm going to speak into your life right now. And when you're like, be a good teammate, that sounds like, just, hey, here's the thing you should do.
Is that how I sounded? Is that how I sounded when I said it? Because I felt like that's not how I sounded when I said it.
You get the point.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, if you want me to do a dramatic reading of each bit of advice as we discuss this, I can make it more dramatic sounding, but I thought the beauty of that advice was, one, that it was a grab by the shoulders and, hey, we need to have an honest talk kind of thing. But two, that it's as simple as be a good teammate. I can take that with me. I can remember that. And when I'm tempted to worry about whether I'm getting mine or people notice that I did a good thing enough or worry more about me looking good than the team actually winning, then be a good teammate flashes into my brain since whatever that was, 9th grade. And I think it's helpful. Doesn't good advice have to be succinct enough to be memorable as well as complex enough to actually affect things?
Let me tell you about a moment where I received some advice. So,
all right,
my wedding day, we're in tuxes. I'm in a tux. My dad's in a tux. We're in the back bedroom of the house getting ready to walk out. Dad's the best man. He looks at me. He grabs me by the shoulders and he looks deep in my eyes. He goes, boy, let me tell you something. I was like, yes, sir. He said, you're about to be married. Yes, sir, I am. Listen, whatever she cooks, you eat it and you ask for seconds. I said, yes, sir. It sounds like there's deep meaning behind this. What do I need to know? He said, he said, one day your mama cooked me some food and the potatoes were a little dry. I'm going to be honest. They were a little dry. And she asked me how they were. I told her they were dry. She didn't say a word. She got up, grabbed my plate, walked to the sink, threw it in the sink. He just said,
passive aggressive.
He said, whatever she cooks, you eat it. And you ask for seconds. And I said, yes, sir. And so clearly, this is an older man who has been through life experience. He is descending from the mountain of knowledge with tablets that were given to him by God Almighty, things that need to be passed on to the next generation, right? And so I took this forward into my marriage, knowing that no matter what happens, I'm going to eat it and I'm going to ask for seconds. So fast forward 8 months, my wife, lovely as she is, she was saving money. She was being frugal, and she shopped at warehouse discount groceries.
Okay.
It was halfway between where she was going to school and where I was working. So we lived in this little town, and it was a bent and dent store. So like literally, if the cans were bent, they weren't good enough for the Piggly Wiggly, they would go to warehouse discount grocery, right? So
yeah, still tastes good.
Yeah. Well, that and botulism, but that's beside the point. So anyway,
That's for cows.
She brings home this Sloppy Joe mix, and she cooks it. We're going to have Sloppy Joes for dinner. And this was a wonderful time in our life. You know, I'm learning how to work and be professional. You know, she's going to school. She's doing fascinating things at her job. And we're coming home and we're trying to like feel out what it's like to be a family around a table. It's just the two of us. And so we would like set the table and sit down together. It's pretty cute looking back on it. And she makes Sloppy Joes. And she sets the Sloppy Joe in front of me. And I take a bite. And off the record, Tara, you're not allowed to listen to this part of the podcast. It was real bad. Real bad.
Okay.
I think it was discount meat as well. I don't know what was going on. Maybe it was ground turkey. You know how sometimes they try to trick you? Yeah.
Yeah, discount canned food I can live with. Discount meat's not going to work.
Yeah, so that's what was going on. And I was thinking to myself, this is the worst Sloppy Joe I've ever had. And then I just thought back. It was like a lightning bolt hit me. I saw my dad's lip quiver and being like, whatever she cooks, ask for seconds. And I was like, what do I do? Because she takes a bite and she goes, oh, this is awful. And she stands up and she takes her own plate and she goes to the trash and she puts her own Sloppy Joe in the trash. And I'm sitting there.
Oh, well, you have carte blanche.
No, I'm remembering the words of my father. He descended from the mountain of knowledge with tablets. Like he had seen junk, man.
Your wife dumped it in the trash.
You don't understand the play, Matt. So what I did is I took his advice in that moment and I said, thank you, dear. Can I have another? And she's like, no, I'm not going to feed you more. I was like, I'd like another. And I choked down another Sloppy Joe.
Oh.
Do you have any idea how many husband points I scored with that?
No, I don't. How many husband points did you score with that?
She still talks about it today.
Are you kidding?
No, this is serious. Like, this was a serious moment in our marriage. And the fact that I ate that Sloppy Joe that was bad by her account, for me, I asked for seconds. It ended up really good for me.
Wow.
That's what good advice feels like to me. It's like it changes your life when you follow the advice. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Good advice, brilliant advice does that. And there's a lot of little advice that you get all the time, like, there's a detour down there. That road's washed out. Go this other way. Little stuff. I'd call that more of like advisory, like you have been advised more than advice. But the really profound stuff, I had people tell me a couple of things before I got married as well.
Were they staring into your eyes and were their lips quivering? Like they had seen, like the 1,000-yard stare, like they'd been in war?
Yeah. Somebody told me right before we got married, they were like, at some point, your wife is probably going to be pregnant. And that is going to be weird for you at first because you're not wired to get that. You're not going to get it. You're not going to understand the implications. For her, for you, it's going to be a very disorienting, confusing thing for you. Be wonderful to your wife during that time. Whatever is the normal amount of care, concern, encouragement, intimacy, tenderness, kindness that you would show, quadruple it. Trust me on this. And I was like, okay, I'll remember that. And then when Camilla was pregnant with our first child, I think I went with like maybe normal level because I was weirded out. I didn't know what to do with that. And I was excited, but terrified. I just didn't know what to do with that. I'd never been a guy who's husband to somebody who's pregnant before. And I really regret that I did not follow that advice. I mean, Camilla was awesome and great, but there was an opportunity there for me to say, I love you and I'm with you. That was a very unique opportunity, and I did not seize on it as much as I could have. And that is probably the best advice I ever got that I did not take as fully to heart as I obviously should have.
Huh.
Do you have any that you regret not taking?
Oh, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. I have no doubt that there's advice that I've been given that I didn't take. But yeah, I mean, I probably blocked it from my memory because of how painful it was.
Yeah. Have you ever had anybody hit you with the hardcore "I told you so" after you ignored their advice?
I can't remember anybody doing that to me.
Yeah, people have been pretty gracious with me too.
Oh, wait. Here, I've mentioned the Supra on the podcast before. Yeah, that was some advice my wife gave me. You know, she's like, don't buy this car. And I was like, gotta buy it. And I did buy it. And the compression on the cylinder was out and it didn't work. And she did not say, I told you so, which was really, really smart on her part, because anytime she says anything now, I'm like, whoa, I need to listen to that.
Yeah, she forfeited her right to crush you, to completely dunk on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big moment.
It's a pretty big moment.
I don't know, man. Giving and receiving advice, it's weird and it's hard. And I think you do kind of forget when you received good advice sometimes, because if advice is given really well, it feels like you figured it out, not like some wise sage sat you down and told you how things were going to be. If they did it well, I guess it was kind of your idea and you're the one who figured it out. Did you ever see Willow?
No.
The movie with Val Kilmer?
I did when I was a kid, but I don't remember it.
And it's terrible in retrospect. It might have the best movie soundtrack of any movie ever. I'm not kidding about that, by the way. It's phenomenal. James Horner, before people knew who James Horner was, it's just delightful. High spirits, super fun. Willow might be set in the same universe as Star Wars. We don't really know where it is. It's not Earth. And the bad guy in Star Wars is Darth Vader, and the bad guy in Willow is Bav Morta. So like Dark Father, Bad Mother. George Lucas is behind it. So people were pretty excited that this was going to be like a big thing, and it never was a big thing. But in that, there's this little moment where Billy Barty is giving advice to Warwick Davis, who played Wicket, the Ewok in Return of the Jedi.
Huh.
He was in Harry Potter too. People would know him more from that now. But he's giving him this cryptic advice about his own ability to direct his own future and his own path. And, maybe it's profound, maybe it's not, whatever. But what I remember taking from that as a kid was, look at the way this guy could have just pulled Willow aside and said, hey, the power to shape your own future is in your hands. So make good choices, young man, and get out there and take control of your life. But instead, he did it with this kind of cryptic riddle and nudging Willow's character toward understanding it. And then as those ideas rattle around in Willow's head and as events unfold in his life, he gradually connects the dots himself. And then he really deeply, profoundly internalizes that advice for himself.
Because he made him arrive at it himself.
Yeah. And do you think there's something to that being led to the water is more effective than kind of having the water put straight to your lips?
Yeah, I think so. But sometimes I just need it spelled out, man. Sometimes I'm like, quit speaking in riddles. Tell me what to do with my hands.
How do you tell somebody when that's what you want, though? Do you just say that to people? If you don't know what to do, you just ask?
Yeah, definitely. Tell me what to do. I will do it. I trust you. That kind of thing.
So why do you think people don't just lead with that?
I think it's the difference in knowledge and understanding. Like if somebody says, hey, do this, then okay, I have the knowledge of doing that. But like you'll gain understanding if you experience it just a little bit. I think that's why. There's a big difference in knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, and I think you articulate that really well. Do you remember how you said that at the end of the Backwards Bicycle video?
Yeah, I just said knowledge isn't understanding. I mean, just because you know how something works doesn't mean you understand how it works. And then I go on to draw another point about cognitive bias and stuff like that.
That's right. That's right. So where does wisdom fit into that then? Knowledge, understanding, wisdom. Is wisdom different, or is that just a synonym for understanding?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sitting here genuinely thinking about this question. It's not like I know that there's a right answer and I'm trying to get you to say the right answer.
I need to think about it. Give me a second to think, and let's come back, and then let's figure it out.
Okay, yeah, let's just keep talking giving and receiving advice.
My family is at a play practice for the kids. My wife is expecting to have to come home and make dinner even though it's getting late. And I have decided that I'm taking it upon myself to make these carne asada steak bowls. All right, got the bag here. And ingredients. Oh, don't drop that one. And recipe card. Wash and dry all produce. That makes a ton of sense. I will do that. Trim and thinly slice scallions. This is embarrassing. I don't know what scallions are. But everything is labeled. Scallions. It says so right on the thing. Making me look smart. It says trim and thinly slice them, separating whites from greens. All right. Those look like the whites. These look like the greens. Oh, I see what I was doing here. Okay. Yeah, that looks like food I've eaten before. Booyah. So I melt 1 tablespoon of butter in a small pot over medium-high heat. Add scallion whites. Cook, stirring until softened. 1 to 2 minutes. Great. Stir in rice. 1/4 cups of water. Okay, jasmine rice. This is gonna work. I'm going to have an impressed wife. No, not impressed. I'm going to have a wife who knows that I love her. Okay. Bring to a boil. We are there. Then cover and reduce to a low simmer. I can do this. Step 2, make salsa. So I need to dice the tomato. Okay, I can figure this out. Here are the tomatoes. Ah, nuts! Family's home. Well, the point is, I can be a nice man at times.
I'm so happy because I'm so
Right.
I want a whole loaf of rice. I love rice. That rice looks so good. It looks so much better than the rice I made. Steak, please.
That isn't steak, but
Edible?
yum.
That's the first HelloFresh meal you've ever cooked by yourself.
By myself, yeah. How's it taste?
Please pass
Good.
the steak.
I really like the steak.
Okay, so I was able to figure that out. The family was ridiculously happy with that. I mean, did I sound marginally competent at least?
I mean, it's easy. How can you mess it up? All the instructions are right there. Well done.
That really is it. I didn't know what some of the words meant. I don't understand cooking at all. But the context clues and the pictures were so clear that I was able to figure it out. And when Camilla looked at it, I was like, straight up, like, I need honest feedback here. Did I do this right? And she was like, yeah, you did the whole thing right. There's no way I could do that without HelloFresh. So it was pretty awesome.
So we have a promo code, right? People can do this at their house?
We do, yeah. You go to HelloFresh.com/NDQ80 and enter the promo code NDQ80 at checkout, and it gives you $80 off your first month, which is a lot of free food.
So there you go. $80 off your first month, HelloFresh.com/NDQ80, and use the promo code NDQ80 at checkout.
I'm not kidding, man. That is the easiest and best food I have ever made by myself. Recipe cards were easy. Absolutely everything I needed was right in front of me. I think it did take me like literally half an hour to make all of that. And you heard what my family thought. Apparently it was delicious. So I'm pretty happy with everything.
Awesome. It's like getting continuous advice from a chef the whole time.
Oh, I see what you did there.
When I called you earlier and we said we were going to be talking about advice, I tweeted from the Smarter Everyday account, what is the best advice you ever received?
Okay.
And good grief, there's been a ton of responses there. Hundreds.
Give me the highlights.
A CEO of a rocket company, Tori Bruno, says, do the right thing. I like that.
Can I pause you just for a second there?
Yeah.
So to be clear, when a rocket CEO has advice, it's like, hey, do the right thing. You're like, that's brilliant and profound and great. That's really good. But when your buddy is like, be a good teammate, you're like, that's terrible and trite. I'm trying to understand like what the difference is between the two, because they both seem really simple.
The difference is he runs a rocket company.
Thank you for just owning it.
Yeah. And he's awesome. You know Tori Bruno. Did you see where they renamed the ship? Did you see that?
No, what they renamed the ship?
So they have a plant where ULA creates and manufactures rockets. And then they put them on a boat and they take them all the way down the river, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, and then they take them to Florida and they shoot them. Well, they renamed the ship the rocket ship. And they did the old school traditional ceremony to rename a rocket because you have to like please Poseidon. They
smashed a bottle on it?
Oh yeah, they smashed a bottle. They offered up like green leaves. It was the whole bit. It was quite funny.
Was Poseidon pleased?
Apparently so, because it now bears the name rocket ship.
That's what you would call your boat. They beat you to it.
Well, I mean, they should call this rocket ship. It's great. Let me read some of these other pieces of advice. There's a guy, okay, this guy's name is Mark, and his advice is from his father. It says, my father's 3 rules for life. Lift with your legs, stay out of debt, and live on the high ground.
Dang, that's really good.
I like that.
I mean, just think about how many of those apply to Anakin Skywalker. Can't lift with his legs because he didn't live on the high ground.
That's right.
That's just a lot went wrong there.
That's right.
Can't speak to the debt situation.
Let's see what else we got here. Don't rush things in life. Don't argue with a fool. You can't change the wind, so just adjust your sails. Yeah, there's just a lot of really good stuff here. I'm going to have to go read all this later.
I did the inverse. Can I read you a couple of the responses to my question, what's the worst advice you ever received?
Sure.
Yeah, I did that from Matt Whitman, TMBH. And here's some good ones. Accept the first offer because it's the best you'll get.
What? Okay, this is bad advice. Okay, got it.
This is bad advice.
Okay.
Just put it on the credit card and pay it off over time. You'll be fine getting a PhD in English. That's a pretty good example. Worst advice she ever got was not to be completely honest about everything with her fiance. That's bad advice.
Wait. Oh, somebody told her to lie to her fiance.
Somebody told her to lie to her fiance.
That's bad advice.
Yeah, you're getting ready to get on a life raft, just the two of you for the rest of your lives. Better start out with honesty.
I was at this Gold Jacket Monocle Club thing one time. It was a meeting with a bunch of YouTube type people there.
And they give you gold jackets and monocles? Do you get to blimp?
You get to blimp, yes. The Gold Jacket Monocle Blimping Club.
I'll never be there.
And they do this thing at this particular meeting where they bring in a celebrity to like talk about how their life has blah, blah, blah. And they brought Cardi B in.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they did. And so Cardi B's on stage and she's like, and somebody's interviewing her. And we're all sitting there listening. And she's like, yeah, just go for the dollars.
That was the advice?
Yeah, it was something like, yeah, just go for the money because, you know, you can always have the money and then do the things with the money. And I just mouth agape. I just like, my head turns left and right. I'm looking at other people in the room like, did that just happen?
Did they pay her money to tell you to try to get money?
No. She was just shooting from the hip.
And also, who needs that advice? It's like somebody being like, you know, what is the old advice? You're like, just breathe. Well, obviously you're going to want to breathe. I mean, the default setting of people is go get the money. I don't see why she needed to be compensated or brought in to tell you all that.
No. My point was she was saying like money is most important in your life because you can use it to do things.
Yeah, you can use it in exchange for goods and services.
The way it came across was like, don't worry about people in your life or just go for the quick monetary things that are, you know, fleeting. Yeah, that's most important. Yes. Invest your time in that.
I'm with you. And my point is, that's usually the problem that good advice is trying to overcome.
Right. Yeah.
The advice she was giving is what most wise advice is trying to overcome.
Yep.
That's solid. That's a game changer.
So let's break this down to two different things. How you give advice to people and how you receive advice. So whether it's good advice or bad advice that you're receiving, we'll talk about that. But like, first of all, if you were going to give advice to someone else, you're kind of assuming that you know something the other person doesn't. Is that arrogant to do that?
Well, it depends. Did they ask or did you just decide to do it?
I'm just asking you, like, if you're going to give advice, how do you do it?
Well, I have been asked to give advice a lot because of the nature of my job and counseling and all of that. I mean, isn't walking into a counseling appointment effectively just a big, giant request for advice?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we take that as a request for advice, I would say usually step one is be asked, but There are some people where you've got basically permanent open door status with. So you, Adam, Aaron, probably Nate, and obviously my wife, and probably my parents. It's just full on rock and fire. If you have a thought, I'm listening. I fully trust you. So I might disagree. It might be weird, but I trust you and you're just allowed to say it. Everybody else, like if somebody I didn't know very well came up to me and said stuff you say to me sometimes, that'd be gross. Just like, you don't have the data. I don't trust your advice. You don't know me. You're not close enough to the equation to give me sound counsel. So I would say step one on giving good advice in my mind is understand where you stand with the other person.
Yeah. I was sitting with an individual the other day that I respect. I know he's a successful business person, and we were at a picnic. He was like, why don't you come sit down and we'll just chat? I was like, okay. So I sat down. I started asking him about his life, like, you know, how he met his wife, things like that. And he just starts giving me through his own story. Like, the way he did it was very clever, because he wasn't giving me advice, like saying, this is the way you should live your life. He was telling me his story. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, this is what worked for me and this is what didn't work for me. And I was just eating it up, man. I was like, wow, you know, I'm learning a lot here. Like, well, what happened then? Well, when you did that, what happened? And so it was a really clever way to give me advice, and I loved it. Well, while we were in this conversation, another individual walks up, kind of injects themselves into the situation, doesn't understand the dynamic that's going on there, and starts trying to participate in the conversation because they want to be like, I don't know, they want to be part of the conversation. And they don't understand that my role in that conversation was to shut up and listen. And this guy's role in the conversation was to talk. And every once in a while, I would ask him a question in order to keep the advice flowing. But this person walked up and thought we were doing some kind of like just general advice on life thing. And he walks up and just starts telling me how things should be. And I got to tell you, man, it came across really, really bad to both to me and to the person that was talking to me. And it was a train wreck, man. It was like, wow, you didn't understand the dynamic that was going on here. And you look kind of dumb right now because you're trying to offer advice. A, you're 20 years younger than this person that's talking. B, you're talking about things you've never done. And we all know that you've never done these things, but you just read this somewhere. They kind of, stopped the conversation right where it was. They missed this opportunity to glean all that information that I was trying to pick up. These like crumbs of wisdom as they were falling around this person's feet. I was just pecking at them like a bird. It was like a young cat that ran in and just scared everybody away, if that makes any sense. It was an interesting dynamic, but there's two parts to that equation there. Number one, how that person was giving me advice. And number two, how it felt when someone jumped in and tried to actively give advice without being asked.
One works really well. The other feels really weird.
It does.
Do you have people with whom you feel like you just have permanent green light, open lines of communication for advice, giving and taking?
There are people that I feel very close with that I'll just tell them what I think. Sometimes I misjudge the relationship and I overstep my bounds without realizing it. And I always feel like a big doofus when I'm called out on it because I didn't realize it. But I'm always thankful that somebody calls me out on it so that I can become more self-aware.
Your advice is overwhelmingly really insightful and good. I think you get good feedback on that approach very, very, very often. So when you get good feedback on it, you keep doing it because it helps people and you just generally have a pretty good read on life and a pretty good read on stuff.
Yeah, but you can get overconfident with it at times.
Yeah. Your advice technique is a little different than the one I saw in the people I ended up kind of emulating, in that your advice technique it's pretty engineer-like. There's a situation, there's a resolution to the situation. This would be the solution to the problem. We should do that. And if you were usually wrong, that would be obnoxious, but you're usually right. But you are definitely not the type of advice giver that comes in and is like, well, here are multiple possible solutions to this situation. Here's a perspective. Here's a perspective. Usually you're pretty good at sizing up a situation and taking a direct line to what you believe to be the best solution. I think that serves you well most of the time. I do think there are styles of advice giving, right? Like, you see that my style is different than yours.
Oh, yeah, totally. And amongst my engineer friends, my farmer buddy.
I do.
If I call him and I'm like, hey, what do I do in this situation? He will say, you do this, no question. And I say, yes, sir. And the conversation's over. That's how we communicate, and that's what I'm looking for. And other people like to sit and talk about feelings a little bit more.
Oh, wow. We went straight to pejoratives for a view of a different take on advice.
Not that I don't like that. I do.
No, let me flesh out what to you seems like talking about feelings. Sometimes I think that when you're talking with a person, what they need is exactly what you're describing. Just, oh, it's this. Like, remember when we got started on the podcast thing and you reached out to a couple of friends, you're like, hey, what should we go with in terms of mics? And they're like, you're going to do a ton of research and then you're going to buy these.
Yep.
Skip the research, just buy these.
Yep.
And we were like, great, we'll buy those. And then we bought them. And that's what we're talking into now because it was great advice. Other times, the answer to the question isn't what product should I purchase. Other times, the answer to the question is frankly pretty existential in nature. Who am I? What am I doing? What are the different shades of right that are contained in the options before me? I have 5 right things I could do here. Which right thing should I pick? That's a very complex question with a lot of moving parts. And so when you have questions like that, my favorite advice that I receive from people is the let's paint pictures. Okay, well, let's work through all the things that we could do here. And if it was like this, then it probably could play out like this, or this. If we do this other thing, it plays out like that. Okay.
In engineering, what you're referring to right now is known as a fault tree analysis. You have a path and you're like, well, what happens if we take this path and then this thing breaks? Okay, well, that's where we end up. Or the family dissolves. Well, what about if this thing breaks? Oh, well, in that case, then we just tick off Aunt Betty, but everybody else is cool. You know what I mean? So,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
How funny, though. We're so different. We should do a podcast. We're talking about the same thing, and you called it a fault tree analysis, and I called it painting pictures.
Yeah.
But it is the same thing.
It is.
I noticed in some people there's a great big capacity for the advice really isn't the point of the conversation. Like, it needs to be there. There needs to be some kind of feedback that's offered. But I think for some people, when they seek advice or you get into an advice-style conversation, they want to be heard. They want to articulate the thing because there's some kind of validation in being heard. Maybe every now and then I like to do that. You like to do that roughly never?
What do you mean?
You're not a processor. That's not what you do. When we get into advice stuff, my way or your way, you very rarely muse and reflect and process and just kind of let the thing you're wrestling with meander. You did that when you were thinking about retiring from your vocation. I've seen you do it. But generally speaking, that kind of, I just want to be heard and I want to say a bunch of words right now about all the different things I'm feeling, that's generally not your style.
I kind of reject the idea that I don't contemplate things for long. I'm not a robot. I don't like.
I didn't say that.
Input and
you definitely
output.
Contemplate things. You just don't do it like that.
Okay. I think I see what you're saying. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm too robot-like to understand.
No, but you know the difference. Like, think about your most emotional friend. And if it's me, then fine. Picture me. But there are other people that you talk to where the net output of this conversation is that they just really wanted to say a lot of things about the situation and what they're feeling. And there is no other output from the conversation. It's just wanted to say a bunch of stuff. I don't think that's my style, but I'm more prone to do that than you are, I think.
I got this buddy. We were in engineering school, and we were sitting there working on spreadsheets. We were, I forget, doing some kind of heat transfer analysis, something complicated, and it was difficult for me. And this joker had an earbud in his ear, and he would look over and be like, yeah, that's the wrong function. You're going to want to use this one. Your variables are wrong there. And then he would turn to his phone, he would hit unmute, and he would say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Mute. Yeah, dude. And so you need to you didn't name the variable correctly. 1 second. Mute. Golly, that must feel awful. Mute. Yeah, I'm almost done. What's your x-axis say? And it was just like 3 or 4 minutes in between mute, unmute. And it took me a second. And then when he hung up the phone, I said, is that what I think it was? Were you doing what I think you were doing? He's like, yeah, buddy, next level. I've got this figured out. I was like, wow, that's amazing. He's good.
You got to sell that, though. If you're going to do that routine and you go with, oh, that must be hard, That doesn't work. You got to sell it. It can't sound like you're playing a game on your phone or messing around or something.
Or calculating a heat transfer coefficient of aluminum. Yeah.
Never been in that position, but yeah, I hear you.
Smart dude.
You know, we kind of think there are these two options. You got the people who like to just really verbally process and be heard. And then you got the people who like want to solve the problem, right? That's always the dichotomy. But I think there's a third thing that you run into when you're given advice or getting good advice. And that is sometimes it can be a service to have your competence be the sounding board for the other person's situation. And because they are having to say these words out loud to someone with your skill set, your competence, who they respect at your level, they're kind of workshopping the problem in a way that they can't by talking out loud to themselves in the car, just because they have to make it make sense to you and you're smart. And so I think the third way that this kind of works is that people kind of use the brain and the presence and the integrity of the other person to workshop a solution.
I have a couple of guys in my life. They've made a decision to speak into my life. They've actively decided that they're going to invest in Destin. They're like at the end of their careers. They've done amazing things. And sometimes if I just say, hey, can I run something by you? We'll hop on the phone and I'll just say what I'm thinking. Like, hey, this is an opportunity that's coming up. It feels weird. I want to talk to you about this. And then I just shut up. The advice that I've received in that time is amazing because they won't tell me what to do. They'll tell me things that have happened throughout their lives and how they thought it would play out, but how it actually did play out. And usually they're clever enough to make themselves look like the dummy in the story, but what they're doing is they're putting me in the story and saying, well, you know, if you were to do this, you would be like me that time that I thought I would get an appointment to this location. And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They role play, but they're clever enough to do it to basically say, Destin, you're making a mistake because you're going after the wrong things. You need to focus on this in this moment in your life. I've just straight up told these people like, hey, thank you for speaking into my life. But, you know, just thank you doesn't do it. This is like generational type wisdom that they're passing on.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in a humble way to someone that's far less important than they are. And I don't know, it's just, I covet those types of relationships.
And if they'd Kool-Aid Manned that advice, you're pretty big. You might have heard it. You're better than just about anybody I know at accepting feedback and advice Kool-Aid Man style, exploding through the front door with, Destin, you need to do this. You take it or deflect it very well. You don't get the guard up sometimes, but you're better than just about anybody I've met. But they were smart enough to know that the seeds of those ideas were far more likely to get planted deep underground and grow into something exactly the way they needed to if they presented it with humility and modesty and subtlety without either party ever really having to acknowledge what is happening in the exchange. That's just an older woman, older man art form that I don't think you and I have mastered yet.
No, not at all. There's something that happened to me a long time ago when I was an engineering intern, and this was another way to give and receive advice. I was working in a jet fuel pump lab. We were developing a fuel pump for the Joint Strike Fighter, and my job was just to sit there and wait and test the fuel every so often. I would, draw some fuel, test the lubricity of the fuel, see if anything had changed. I had to cool the fuel down to a certain temperature, and then I had to go test it and then make sure everything was good. It was like a hardcore engineering data point collecting type job.
Mm-hmm.
And the boss came back there, and the boss said, hey, I got good news and bad news. We have to test X number of data points by Tuesday. I know the way this process works. It takes an hour and 15 minutes to chill every fuel sample. I'm sorry. I know what this means. I know that means we're going to be working around the clock till Tuesday. I'm very sorry about this. I was like, man, crap. I really wanted to go home. I had that thing with the family. This was a big deal because I was living in Mississippi at the time, and I wanted to go back to Alabama for this thing. The guy, the older engineer, he was actually not an engineer. He was a technician. He was with me. He said, we'll see what we can do, boss. I've got some ways to work on some stuff, but we'll see if we can get it done by Tuesday. He goes, yeah, man, I'm sorry about this. He goes, yes, sir. We went back to the lab, and I was just like complaining the whole way. Man, this sucks. I really wanted to blah, blah, blah. He's like, it's going to be all right. I said, what do you mean? He's like, just shut up and watch for a minute. I was like, okay, yes, sir.
Okay.
So I just shut up. So he was clearly saying, you're whining, you're being a kid, watch the man work. And so he went back there to the jet fuel lab and he pulled a sample of the fuel. He put a cap on it, which is not something we did. He put a cap on it. And usually we tested for the vapor pressure and then we would test lubricity after it reached a certain temperature in our chiller that we had. Instead of walking into the lab where we do that, he just kept walking. And I was still in shut up mode and I just followed him. And we walked all the way across the plant. We walked into this little welding area and this guy goes, hey, what's up? He goes, hey, Bobby, how's it going? Can I use the thing? Yeah, go ahead, man. He's like, all right. And he opens this freezer and I look at the thermometer and it's like minus 140 degrees.
It's a nice freezer.
And he puts this thing down in there. He shuts the freezer. And I was like, what? And he looks at me and he just says, never tell him everything you know. I may have said like, you mean we can do this in 15 minutes? What can we do? Or whatever. But he's just like, never tell him everything you know. We went back and we were able to get things done before the weekend and I was able to go home. And that stuck with me. And what he was saying was just because you have a capability at your disposal, you don't have to tell everyone everything you know. And that's the tendency that I have is like, I'm just going to tell everybody everything I have at my disposal. And if you do that, you no longer have levers you can pull and able to do certain things. So the question is, was this ethical? Yeah, I think it was ethical because we had this chiller back in this one location and that's how we test the vapor pressure. And it doesn't really matter because the normal course of our duties is we had to check it every hour or so, but he had other ways to do it. And so what he does is he ends up looking like he's the hero because he's able to get everything done on time, but nobody has to know how he did it. So he held some of those critical pieces of knowledge in reserve, and he didn't try to get glory by telling everybody the secrets. He just did it. That really stuck out to me. It was strategic. He was strategic with things he had learned throughout the years.
Yeah, that's situational advice, I guess. That's more life lesson. You know, the kind of thing that you internalize, you remember the incident, you remember when you learned this thing and made this decision that this is how you were going to do stuff. There was a guy I knew who we were walking somewhere in Chicago one time, and it's the kind of place that we were allowed to be, but we were going to be hassled unless we just walked in and acted like we were supposed to be there. Again, ethical, legal, but, you know, Chicago's a fancy place, and so his advice was, don't bumble, just act like you're supposed to be here. And then we did, and it was a really cool thing that we got to go to. And I've remembered that advice forever. And the converse drives me crazy now. When we go places and we don't quite have a clear plan and we start bumbling and then people start noticing and they're like, well, those people aren't supposed to be here. It makes me feel really, really uncomfortable. And I always think of that moment in Chicago when I got that bit of life advice.
There's something about learning something in the moment like that.
Yeah.
It sticks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And again, those pithy little hit the nail on the head kind of expressions where you just add it to your list of this is how I do business that rattles around the back of your brain. You know what I should do, man? I should make a list of this is how I do business because it's really hard to sit here and try to conjure all of those out of the moment as we talk about them. But I'd kind of like to know what all the things are that shape the way I do life, my MO. I need to start writing them down when I think of them. I'm going to make like a Google Doc sheet or something and try to just fill that with all the things that I've absorbed along the way. And then what I want to do is maybe even sit down with you at some point and be like, hey, all of these seemed like good ideas when I integrated them. We should consider whether these are actually still good ideas in light of now.
Yeah.
I mean, when you don't revisit those things, right? You just accept them in the moment. And I think both the examples we gave are good examples. But you accept them in the moment and then you just move on with that being the way you do things now. And maybe you don't reevaluate them enough.
Yeah, I'm constantly trying to learn stuff like this. The Bible is for me, it's a really good place to get stuff like this. I go to a lot of meetings, and this is one I use all the time.
Meetings.
Okay, I'm just going to read this. I just Googled it because I want to get it straight. It's in Luke 14. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a more distinguished person than you might have been invited. If so, the host who invited you will come to you and say, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up here to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests.
That's really shrewd.
I do that all the time, dude, and it works. You ever done that?
Yeah, because of that passage. That's in keeping with all those teachings of Jesus throughout the Gospels about, if you want to be great, make yourself least. First, last will be first, all of that kind of stuff. It really is that simple. When I think I'm important, and I act like I'm important, and I use words like I'm important, and I try to justify why I'm at the table and why I'm here, I look like an idiot. When I keep my mouth shut, the worst thing that happens is nobody thinks anything about me. So 2 things that we have a pin in right now. One is it would seem like based on this conversation since the break, that we do think wisdom is next level beyond understanding.
Yes.
Knowledge you can Google. Understanding, you have to Google and take notes and then compare those notes.
I think understanding also falls within the context of life experience on one specific circumstance.
Yeah, that's good.
There's 2 ways to learn something: by figuring it out on your own, by screwing it up, or by listening to someone who's already screwed it up. So.
Or listening to someone who listened to someone who screwed it up and emulating what they got right.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, whereas wisdom, it's judgment, it's discernment. It's the ability to look at a whole lot of variables, and with this mixture of intuition and fact and failure and experience and observing other people's experience, do things that make sense, but not just for no reason. Wisdom only works as a concept within a larger framework of a very clear set of values, good and bad. If you and I disagree entirely on what is good and bad and what are desirable outcomes in life and how other people should be made to feel, then we can't share wisdom with each other because it doesn't align in any way. We're not going toward the same ends. So wisdom kind of assumes implicitly that some stuff is dumb and destructive and really doesn't produce good results, and other stuff is a good idea and constructive and does produce good results. Whereas knowledge and understanding, I think, don't quite get to that big meta level.
I think there's this thing that can be achieved by a human, and that's when they have demonstrated wisdom to a point where their advice is sought after, and those people move on to this next level of like graybeards. I call them graybeards in the engineering world, and these are the advisors. I'm reading this book right now about Lafayette, and his relationship with George Washington was really interesting because Washington was this older general who had established himself, and Lafayette was this young kid who's like trying to learn from him. But it's interesting because that he talks about going back to France, and after being in France, he recognized certain people as being advisors, and people would travel from great distances just to go present a matter to an advisor and say, hey, we know you're very wise. We want to talk to you about this situation. Please give us advice. I think it's really cool to think that people can establish themselves as this person who will give good information, like Yoda almost,
Until episode 8. I don't know what he was talking about there.
You know what I mean. I think
I do know what you mean.
Do you have advisors in your life like that?
Yeah, and that's different than that list of friendships that I have where it's just give and take, and all of our lives are kind of banging against the bumpers of the child bowling alley on our way down to the pins. And so we all just shoot straight with each other all the time. I have older people in my life, men and women, who they just know stuff I don't know. And part of it's that academically they know stuff that I don't know. But more meaningfully, it's not about the stuff that they know that I don't. It's about the stuff that they've seen.
There's something important about the gray hair. That's an important feature. For example, think about a mathematical function and just imagine a curve going up and down, but it's, generally trending up. And, if you're young, your life is a very small slice of that curve. And so what you see is all that you know. But the person with gray hair has access to all of that data history. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a guy the other day, and I was saying, man, prices of getting a contractor to do anything at your house is crazy right now, and you can't get anybody out there. And he said, oh, I'm seeing signs, though. It's about to change. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I mean, for example, people are calling me just to chat. That hasn't happened in a while. I was like, what does that mean? He said, well, the last time it happened was, and then he just laid out the data points. He's like, I think the prices are going to go down for you here soon. You'll get it figured out. I was like, oh, cool. I don't know. I think there's some magic in having access to more of the data history. There's like have it right there in front of you in recent memory. It's really interesting.
Well, and I think there's something smart about how culture in the East is built versus culture in the West. In the East, my impression is that there is still tremendous regard for the most aged people in society and in a family and in a household. Whereas here, I would say basically since magazines started happening, we've seen the development of youth culture. Advertisers and marketers figured out that the easiest people to separate from their money are younger people. They try to build brand loyalty in the 20s. And so everything, because of these market factors, tends to skew toward favoring youth over wisdom. And I think we missed something there. And so, we sit down and talk with somebody who's, a graybeard, and you and I are like, whoa, crazy. That guy knows a lot of stuff. Whereas I would think someone in a traditional Eastern culture would expect that that person would know a lot of stuff and would be stunned if that person didn't know a lot of stuff. And I think that's a rather recent innovation for us culturally, and I think it's to our detriment that we celebrate 17 and 19 and 21 so much that it seems to be at the expense of the cultural wisdom and repositories of understanding of where we've been, that being old people.
I think if I ever get to the place where I'm sitting under an oak tree with a big beard and people come up to me for advice, every once in a while I'm just going to throw a couple of weird things in there.
Like really weird things? Go ahead.
Yeah, like, Mr. Sandlin, what is your secret to long life, happiness, longevity? I'm going to be like, you're going to need to eat a complete pine cone every day. Don't cook it anything. Just, you have to bite it like an apple. I don't know why. It just seems to work. Just do it.
You got to say it way wiser sounding than that.
So if long life thy wish for eateth thy... I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I'm going to need more years before I can craft that. So a lot of people always ask me what I listen to when I listen to podcasts. And I've been listening to your show, Jordan, recently. And thanks for being here. I want to tell people about what you're doing. I listened to an episode recently with Adam Savage, and you do a really good job of interviewing, man. Did you practice this, or did you study how to be a journalist or something?
I wish. No, I actually used to be a Wall Street attorney, and that did not help at all with interviewing. But, I found that I'm interested in talking with people, and when you're curious and you have literally 1,000 podcasts under your belt or more, it starts to get easier. So I remember when I was 7 years into doing my show, past radio and things like that, I remember 7 years in, I went, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. And my team actually laughed at me. And I was like, no, I'm serious. I finally feel like I get it.
Yeah, you have. I mean, you're like, I listened to you interview Adam Savage. And I mean, it's just like a familiar conversation. Like you guys have known each other forever. And you're just chatting it up about how he came about to learn certain making methods and things like that. And then the next episode, I'll hear you talk to Dennis Rodman, and you're talking about international politics and his relation to North Korea and like his suicidal thoughts at one point in his life. And you're just like bros. It's amazing. You do a really good job at this.
Thanks, man. A lot of people go, how did you get rapport with people so quickly? And I think part of it is you really have to kind of open yourself up and realize that even if you think you're really different from someone, like Dennis Rodman and I, we don't have a whole lot in common, right? Right. So,
yeah.
But everyone's been bummed out, sad, or felt alone, and so I can relate to him on that. Everyone's tried to get attention for healthy or unhealthy reasons, so I can relate to him on that, and that, I think, opened him up, because, when you interview someone like Dennis Rodman, the temptation is to go, ooh, this guy's so weird. Let me have him expose more of his weirdness for our audience's entertainment, rather than being like, what's going on with you, man? And then having him go, I just don't feel nice sometimes. That's a real conversation.
I really like that, he talked a lot about how Isaiah Thomas was a real big influence in his life. I never would have thought about that from his days on the Pistons. It's a pretty adult-themed episode, but I think it's really good. And so just listener discretion is advised, not around the kids, of course, but man, it is really good stuff. I really like what you pointed out about him looking at the rebounds. As the ball came off of the rim, he was analyzing the spin on his different teammates so he could really, man, it's a good episode, dude. You do good work. So Yeah, go check out the Jordan Harbinger podcast. What episode is, I guess, the Adam Savage and the Dennis Rodman episode? Do you know what those are off the top of your head?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Adam Savage is 219 and Dennis Rodman is 258.
Good work, man. Yeah. So, and again, I really appreciate this little cross-pollination opportunity you gave us. You're a huge podcast. We're not as big as you, but you extended that little token of grace to us. We really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
You're not as big yet. That's the key. Not yet, right?
Oh, whatever, man. You're big leagues, but you do great stuff. And go check out Jordan's podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I like to ask for advice is because often I'm really, really close to the math problem. And I can't see the situation in the top-down bird's eye view that I feel like I can. I'm really close. Like we have this saying. So I like it when somebody is kind of like the general in the troop movement room, and they've got the mustache and they've got the little stick that they're pointing at the board, and they're moving troops, along the flank and all that stuff. And I'm over here. Sometimes I feel like I'm with a rifle in a foxhole shooting in one direction, and I can't see the overarching view. So I really like to reach out and try to get advice from people that have that bigger perspective of what's going on, that are pushing the little soldiers around on the table.
Even the fact that you understand that there is an overarching view that is a higher perspective than the one that you have is a mark of wisdom and age. I didn't think that when I was 20.
You saying I'm old, Whitman?
I'm saying you're working on it. I'm saying you're older than we were when we started this.
That's right.
We've known each other long enough to see each other change.
Speaking of which, I can kind of see something right now in your life. You've moved, and because we're buddies and we know each other pretty well, I can tell that you're stressed out right now.
Maybe a little bit. I feel like it's trending in the right direction, but yeah, moving stuff.
This is unsolicited, but I have mailed you a box, and I told you to have the box there with you. Do you have it?
And I do. Yes, it is here.
Okay, the point of this box is because I can tell that you're stressed out at the moment, and I've carefully crafted everything in this box that I've mailed you so that as you pull it out of this box, as you pull all these things out, they'll each have a unique special meaning, and it'll make you feel good, and it'll kind of trend you in the other direction. It'll kind of move you towards the happiness and less of the stress.
Okay.
So, yeah, can we do this exercise here? I think it'll be good.
I'm absolutely honored that you would put that much thought and energy into the well-being of my psyche. Yes, we can do this.
Yeah.
All right. I've got my box here. It's from Josiah Pennywhistle to Fox Thunderglare.
2 X's.
And
yep.
2 X's for a double dose of my pimping.
Yep.
And then I'm going to use my Champions of the Manatee MT Knives knife to pop this thing open right now.
Yeah.
It has a manatee on it. I'm not kidding.
That's great. I'm happy for
Thanks
you.
for doing this, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's important. I mean, I hand-selected all these things, traveled. I think I went to a mountain in Japan.
Okay.
I think I went to this waterfall in Austria. There's a lot of places all over the globe to get this stuff, so I just want to...
Whatever's in this box, I appreciate you. Whatever is in this box.
All right, let's go. What we got?
Okay, just a minute.
Let's take them
I'm
out.
trying to open it right. I don't know what's in there, so I need to open it carefully.
One item at a time. There's a lot of items in here.
I'm going to reach in so that I don't look and ruin it.
Okay, cool.
Okay. The first item that I pulled out is a sealed container of Spam Classic. So thank you for that. It's made with,
I sent you physical spam.
pork with ham.
I physically spammed you, and I'm so glad that's the first thing you pulled out. You have no idea.
If that's the beginning.
I'm so happy.
Okay. I'm not looking in. I'm going, like, if you put something in here
Oh, golly. I'm
mess with my
so
hand.
happy that's the first thing you pulled out of that box.
Okay. The second thing I pulled out
I've thought about this for weeks. Oh, man.
is I got a green party bulb.
Yeah, it's a light bulb that's green.
And
So it's like if you need light in a certain location, but you need it to be green light, you can do that now.
now I have that as an option.
Yeah, because
I'm
green
better
means
understanding
go.
the spam.
Green means
Yes.
go is typically good, so you can just put it.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have a for example, a light in the room you're in right now, you could just turn the light green. So
I do.
Yeah.
But they are all my LED panels, so
Okay,
I'll
that's
have
fine.
to put that by my desk. It will be green.
okay, cool.
Okay, the next thing I'm pulling out is unfortunately a banana moon pie.
What do you mean? Unfortunately,
It's a banana moon pie. Does it actually taste like banana?
yeah, they're great.
All right, well, let's find out. I've never had a banana moon pie. I was a little bit intimidated. Just all right, here we go. Bottoms up.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't just open the spam immediately.
No, I did not open the spam immediately.
It's pretty interesting.
That's
Yeah.
surprisingly good.
I know it is. It's good. They make a lemon flavored. I've only found them one time at a gas station in rural Alabama, but they're great. They're made in Chattanooga.
I'm gonna do
Yep.
one more bite.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't hate your moon pie. That is not too shabby.
I know. It makes you're feeling happier already, right?
Yeah, actually, everything feels great. Or,
Yeah.
The next thing I got. Oh, this doesn't suck at all. This is really nice. This is like a hybrid between our two hats.
Yeah, I know.
What have you done?
It's a blue hat.
You genius.
It's got a bison on it. It's a nice hat, isn't it?
It is like if our two hats got in a car and drove up to that place that overlooks the city, and then things got a little bit weird, and then a little bit later they had to admit to everybody that they had a little bonus hat. This is the hat that it would be.
It's pretty nice, isn't it?
It's a great hat. Yeah, it's got a buffalo on it. It's blue. It says life is good, which is what you're trying to tell me right now. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going
Yeah.
to take this tag off.
Yep. Keep going. Keep going through the box. Don't get
You know
hung
what?
up.
I'm having fun. This is like Christmas to me, and I'm trying to savor it. Okay, next thing in here.
Well, your birthday is Christmas, so you don't get stuff like this randomly. So this is good.
Yeah, it's true. I only get this stuff once a year. Okay. What the heck is this? This is Dale's steak seasoning. It is delicious on all meats, fish, fowl, and vegetables. It's made by Dale. It's been made by him since 1946, and it's from Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah, so what I want you to try to do is just marinate a steak in that, see what you think.
Okay.
And possibly put some oregano on it. So Dale's and maybe a little bit of oregano, put it in a steak, put it in a bag, try that. I know you like cooking steak, so give that a shot.
I'm all over it. I would love to try some Dale's. I hope this becomes my new favorite seasoning. This is fun. You said you were spamming me, but this has all been good. I mean, other than green bulb, I don't know what I do with the green bulb.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Okay. It's a chocolate moon pie.
Chocolate moon pie. Don't open that right now. Just wait.
What? Okay. Try the chocolate moon pie. Oh, I touched something. It feels weird. Oh, friggin'. Oh, are you kidding me? I'm reaching into this with my bare hands. I just
happened?
grabbed a rotten, sweaty, leaking banana. It's all over.
Oh my gosh, I did put a banana in there, didn't I?
It's rotten, and it has like there are animals in it. Like it's hemorrhaging.
I totally forgot about the banana.
No, you just listen to this. That's what sound the banana makes when I wiggle it.
I'm sorry, I forgot about the banana. Just set that aside. Just set that aside.
Oh, it's making. I can't set it aside. If I set it on things, it'll bleed banana blood onto the things. I got to find a place for this. Just a minute. Oh gosh, it made me feel the thing in my throat. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up in this little box.
I forgot about the banana. I'm sorry. I would have told you to open this.
Hemorrhaging. Some kind of. I didn't know bananas did. Now my hand is sticky. I'm still grateful for all of this, but what kind of a monster takes open food products and just mails them to people?
You're making good points.
Thanks. I feel like I need to be more creative with the next thing I mail you.
No, you don't. You just need to feel better. Not that you feel bad, but you need to quit being stressed.
I do need to quit being stressed. Thank you for understanding.
Yep.
So, on the advice thing, I wrote down, as we're talking here, like my 10 favorite things in terms of giving advice. You mind if I just reel them off and see how close we come to what we talked about?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. Giving advice. Number 1, be prepared to be ignored. So it seems like implicit in giving advice is understanding that people might not take it, and that's cool. No credit or I told you so at the end of advice. Either way, if it doesn't work out, you're helping somebody get better. If it does work out, that's on them. Good job for them making it work out. Fair?
Yep. I like it.
Okay. When giving advice, remember that the other person isn't you. So I could give people advice for what to do with hair care, but it would be good advice for me, but not for them. So remember the other person isn't you.
I think every time we talk, I say, hey, I'm just going to say this and you take it or leave it. And if you don't do this, I'm completely cool with it. That caveat comes out a lot, right?
Yeah. You do a great job of that. You position yourself well. Well, that's the next one. You position yourself well so that you don't own it one way or the other, and you're just rooting for the other person. I see you do this with people all the time. What was the term for your engineering tree thing?
Fault tree analysis.
Fault tree analysis. Okay, so fault tree analysis, or paint pictures with people. Maybe the singular path is good sometimes, but sometimes it's good to play stuff out. We talked about the letting people unload it. Sometimes it's because they just want to get their feelings out. Other times it's because they want a clear, direct answer as to what they ought to do. And other times it's because they just want to process.
Yeah, I see how that'd make you feel, Matt.
Oh, that's a great job. That's really good. That must be hard. Okay, next one is listen for a long time. A good way to give terrible advice is don't properly assess the situation. Jump to a conclusion that you understand it and then start telling people how it is. All the things that you said you appreciated and that you've seen people do and succeed with involved listening and actually understanding the situation well.
Yeah, listening is super important.
It's delicate, isn't it?
It is. Everybody's been down a path that other people haven't. There's specific knowledge and general knowledge, and I think all of us have specific knowledge related to certain things. One thing that I've found that I really appreciate in those people that I trust enough to go ask them for advice, or not trust, respect enough maybe, I really appreciate it when they give me the negative feedback, because that means they love me enough to tell me something's wrong. And if they take the time to think about my situation and give me negative feedback, that's more than them saying it could be this or this. That's usually 100% the answer, because they took a risk to give me that negative feedback, and they wouldn't have done that unless they thought it was important. When I ask for advice, sometimes I say, please tell me what you think I don't want to hear. Tell me the truth. I always try to give people permission to do that, because when they do, it's gold. I was too close to the math problem to see what I was doing wrong. So thanks for giving me negative feedback.
Yeah, likewise. You take it better than I do, but I would like to think I'm getting better at it all the time.
That's the goal, right?
Yep.
All right, man. My daughter and I are going to go learn how to program laser cutters. So I need to go do that.
I'm going to buy pellets and stack up my pellet stack to keep my house warm this winter.
That's good. It's 97 degrees right now in Alabama.
It's snowing here right now in South Dakota.
That's awesome.
Take care, my friend.
Later, buddy. Bye.